Hi, my name is Chunche Lin, and my final project is about web application security. Web application security is defined as a process of protecting websites and online servers against different security threats that exploit vulnerabilities in an application's code. I will be covering three vulnerabilities. Those three are SQL injection, broken authentications, and session management. And the last one will be cross-site scripting, also known as XSS. Before we get into how those attacks work, we need to understand why is it so important in the first place. There are four consequences of a failed defense against hackers. First of all, would be financial loss. The company will need to compensate for the damage it caused to its customers, legal fees, as well as change in share price and valuation and penalties. The second impact would be reputational damage, which is the most important element that a company holds. The third kick will be operational downtime. It is expected a company would be heavily disputed in the aftermath of a data breach. The fourth outcome is a legal action by potential not just individuals, as well as other organizations. So the first attack would be SQL injection, which almost any source of data would be can be injection vector, including environment variables, parameters, external and internal web servers, and all types of users. Despite the variety of database is wide and they do not use the same language, they all follow the core idea that select something from something where something, which is this one. Uh, that something represents a variable defined by the developers. And a bit more specific code will be select everything from users where login equals admin and password equal 123. That's just a bit specific example. So the SQL injection preventions. There are four ways to prevent such an attack. The first method would be input validation, which is to prevent improperly formed data from entering an information system. The second method would be using third-party modules such as IIS ISAPI filter, which will check transmitted data between the server and client, or mod security in Apache, which will send the attacker a 4 or 6 error instead of showing the result that he or she wanted. The third method would be ignoring special character, which is pretty straightforward. And the fourth one will be web application firewall like AWS, Azure, and Cloudflare. The second attack is broken authentication and session management. The core idea of this attack is to obtain access to a few accounts in order to gain the information of a larger group of accounts. It contains three parts: session hijacking and session fixation and broken authentication. So session hijacking occurs when an attacker gains the user session while the user is browsing the internet. It is often caused by session ID that can be easily guessed, insecure session handling methods, poor detection system, and outdated cryptography algorithm. Session fixation is a method for an attacker to determine the victim session, which means the attack happened even before the victim login. It is often caused by client-side spawn section IDs and reuse of session identifiers. Broken authentication. The last part is broken authentication. It is often caused by the absence of security mechanisms on information and communication between client and server. Missing metrics and security knowledges, self-made module allow multiple attempts, as well as the lack of security awareness among users. So the preparation for this attack, in order to prevent such an attack, there are many methods. Some but not all are multi-factor authentications used to deploy non-modified credentials. A mechanism to check the guessable password, complex yet heuristic requirement for the password. Inform the administrator about any attack and document the attacks. Also avoid client-side generated session ID together with creating random session ID for the user. So the last one will be cross-site scripting. The so it is the main idea is to inject malicious code into a vulnerable web application. There are three main types of XSS attacks, which are reflected XSS, stored XSS, and DOM-based XSS. Give me a second. Reflect XSS. It is occur when an application receives information from a current HTTP request and handles it in an insecure way, which will reflect a malicious script to the victim's browser. An example would be this one. The idea is to visiting. So the idea is that while visiting a phone site that requires user to log in into their accounts, an attacker executes this search query, which will trigger the query produce an alert box saying XSS, which is this one. And after that, the page displays the code that the attacker entered is not found, and the URL will be the phone URL followed by the code that attacker just entered, which will be this one. This also tells attacker that the website is vulnerable. He can create his own URL, which something looks like this one, which is the URL link that he just created. And he can embed it as a link into seamlessly harmless email, which he sends to a group of phone users. So store XSS is another type of cross-site scripting. It occurs when application receives data that has low credibility, yet adds that to its later HTTP responses without synthesizing it. An example would be a website allow user input something that everyone else who browse a site would also see. The input would be this one, the input that the developer wants to receive. Okay. But if an attacker decides to enter this one, which he types scripts, and also the code that he wants to insert, it will become a successful attack, and the consequence depends on the code that the attacker decided to enter. So DOM-based XSS. It occurs when the application contains some client-side JavaScript that processes data from an untrusted sources in an unsafe way. In this example, an application user application uses some JavaScript to read the value from the input field that and write that value to an element within the HTML, which is the given code. Uh, the attacker can easily construct a malicious value that can cost their own script to execute. In a typical case, the input field would be populated from part of the HTTP request, such as URL query, string parameter, allowing the attacker to deliver an attack using a malicious URL. In the same manner as reflected XSS. So the prevention of XSS. There are many methods to prevent such an attack, including built-in policies, secure channel between the web server and the web program, or using frameworks that were designed to prevent XSS in the first place, such as React, which will render any embedded value in JSX by escaping anything that is not explicit written in the application. And before rendering it, it converts everything to a string. Right, that's everything. Thank you for watching my presentation. Hope you have a good day.